Halo is a franchise that I've wanted to check out for a very long time, and I haven't been able to because I play all of my games on PlayStation. I did have an Xbox 360, but never really ventured into Halo, and so this video is going to be more of a retrospective of my experience for playing Halo 3 for the very first time. I expect great things because it's such a highly praised franchise, and I know that there are going to be good and bad, and I will be damn surprised if I don't see any Halo fanboys who are going to have a field day in the comment section below. So let's just start it off with a brief synopsis of the story of Halo 3 for those who are uninformed. Halo 3 starts moments after Halo 2's cliffhanger ending, where Chief is now plummeting to Earth. The Master Chief crash lands in Africa and is found by Sergeant Johnson and his team. Master Chief goes to kill the Arbiter as soon as he sees him, but then later finds out that he's working with Sergeant Johnson. After fighting through various Covenant, they eventually land at the UNSC outpost. The Prophet of Truth is searching for the Ark, which will be able to fire all of the Halo rings and eventually kill everyone. The Prophet then activates a slip space portal to move all of his ships away from the UNSC outpost. But then a new portal opens where a flood ship is landing on Earth, which will be a mass danger as it is risking the infection of the entire planet. Master Chief searches the flood ship and finds a message from Cortana, who seems to be absent from the game. Master Chief and the Arbiter go through the portal and land on the Ark. Sergeant Johnson is then captured and is forced to activate the Ark. Keyes attempts to rescue Johnson, but is killed by the Prophet of Truth, leaving Johnson to activate the Ark. Master Chief and the Arbiter rescue Johnson, and the Arbiter kills the Prophet with an energy sword. Chief knows that he must fire the Halo ring to destroy the flood on Earth. Chief eventually finds Cortana at the behest of the Gravemind. Guilty Spark fatally wounds Johnson, and the Chief has to battle it out to take out Guilty Spark and kill him. The blast from the Halo stops the slip space portal, and the Arbiter, Chief, and Cortana narrowly escape the blast. Eventually, a funeral is held for all those who died, including Johnson and Keyes. The Arbiter returns to his own planet, and Chief enters cryosleep until he is needed next. I personally really enjoyed the story of Halo 3, although I must say that it really felt rushed and felt as if the whole campaign took over the span of a couple of hours. The Arbiter was most likely my favourite character out of the roster, and for a first Halo game that I've played, it seemed to be quite enjoyable, but the campaign sort of ruined it a bit for me where it felt so rushed. And story-wise, that is the only gripe I really have with Halo 3. Other than that, I really enjoyed the campaign. I found the gunplay to be really enjoyable. It was one of the stick-out things for me, and I guess that it sort of has to in an FPS. The gunplay was really fun, and most of my favourite weapons were the M6G pistol, which is the classic Halo pistol that is so iconic, the M7 classless, the MA5C ICWS, the M90A ICWS, the M90A cores, the gravity hammer, and of course the classic energy sword. The overall combat was very satisfying and is one of the best features in Halo 3, and I'm guessing the rest of the Halo franchise. Gunning with the M7 classless was so satisfying, especially when dual wielding, and I'd say out of all of the weapons, that was my favourite weapon of all. One of the things I really loved in this game is that it actively encourages you to try new weapons out, and I absolutely love it for that. Picking up new weapons when you run out of ammo and trying something new can really change the overall experience, as if I kept the same weapons that I did from the start of the campaign to the very end, I feel like I would have gotten slightly bored with the gunplay mechanics. And being able to use the Covenant weapons was an absolute blast, especially using the Gravity Hammer, which is by far my favourite Covenant weapon. It was so amazing to feel almost invincible, running and slamming through hordes, killing all the enemies. It really gave you a sense of power, and it did last for a fair amount of time, so it wasn't just a one hit and done kind of weapon, which I really appreciated. It gave you that brief feeling of invincibility, much like the invincibility abilities that you get, but I'll get onto them just a bit later. The various equipment that you get is also one of the things that I really enjoyed. You don't just get your standard grenades, you get a wide variety. And these were really nice and satisfying, even if by the end I didn't really know what which grenade did, and instead just spammed the grenade trigger and hoped for the best. So I basically always had the element of surprise when using all of the grenades. Another thing that I wasn't too keen on when I first started was the lack of a sprint feature, and I get that the game came from a very different time, especially a time before I was even properly playing first-person shooters, and I really didn't like it at first. I felt like I was going slow enough but fast enough that the NPCs still couldn't keep up with me because I was racing ahead to the objective. I don't know what it was, but it allowed me to appreciate the level design a bit more. It encouraged me to look around and see all of the environments that surrounded me and how different they all were from each other. And I do know that they eventually added sprint into the Halo franchise. I believe it was with Halo 4 and 5, and I think in 5 it became a permanent feature, and I'm not too sure on that, so keep that in mind. But in the earlier sections of the game, especially when I first started the very first level, I felt like I was moving at a snail's pace, and it didn't really work with me for the combat, but eventually I learned to master it and appreciated it a lot more, as it got me to engage and watch the environment play out around me. And it really made me appreciate the backgrounds where you could see Covenant ships in dogfights and everything like that. It was absolutely amazing when you actually appreciate and notice these things in the background that are just used to fill out the space and make you feel like it's a real living war that you are partaking in. Abilities are a thing that I could never really get my head around, and I only occasionally used a shield, and it never really felt necessary to use these abilities at all times. Half the time I didn't even notice that I had them, and the icon that displayed your ability didn't make it very clear, and therefore I was unsure if I was going to be using a bubble shield, invincibility, or even just a standard shield. I didn't really find any use for them apart from perhaps the last section of the game, but apart from that I couldn't really find any use for them and often even forgot that they were there. And I'm not critiquing it saying that they're completely useless. They do have their times where they are needed for certain sections, especially if you are struggling, and at certain points I did struggle. Maybe I just wish that they had more variety in their actual abilities, but perhaps I'm just nitpicking here as I'm used to playing other types of games with various types of outlandish abilities, so I'm just getting used to Halo in its entirety. And so here we are, the final nitpick of Halo 3, or maybe even the franchise, I don't know, I haven't played the rest of them. But it's the control scheme The control scheme felt so odd to say the least, especially compared to every other first-person shooter. They just didn't click with me, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even know how to reload until the last few missions before the end of the game. Like, reload is on the top triggers. That doesn't make any sense to me. On every other first-person shooter, reloading is either square or whatever it is on Xbox. It just didn't make sense to me when playing. And at first I thought, oh, you can't even reload in Halo. That's strange. Maybe you just have to unload all of your clip to allow it to reload. And at certain points, I was just emptying my clip if I had a few bullets left, so it would just reload automatically, because I just didn't know. If anything, I feel like the abilities should have been placed on the top two triggers, rather than being on whatever button it is on an Xbox controller. Let me get it a sec. Yeah. The X button. It shouldn't have been on the X button. It should have been on the LB and RB button. Just saying that, because it just feels so wrong. So wrong. But I eventually got used to it, and by the end of the game, I could fluidly control the controller like any standard Halo player could. So eventually I got the hang of it, but it took quite a lot of trial and error. Going into Halo 3 as a PlayStation gamer, I expected a lot more from Halo 3. PlayStation certainly has better story exclusives, but that is down to debate, and I am willing to debate that in the comments down below. But the story felt rushed, and there wasn't really any wow moments for me. Now, this is possibly due to not knowing the other stories of the Halo games before playing Halo 3, but to be fair, the levels were fun and interesting, especially in the final Warthog section, where you're racing to get back to your ship. The overall experience, though, was really fun, and I enjoyed most of the aspects of the Halo 3 experience. The combat and the vehicles were really fun. The Banshee and the Hornet were my personal favourite vehicles. The boss fights were really enjoyable, especially against the spider tanks. They were challenging, but there were enough checkpoints to keep you engaged, and you weren't set too far back. I was really hoping to see more of Cortana, but obviously I picked the wrong game for that. The moments with Cortana and even the visions with Cortana were brilliant, and I loved them, and I'd just like to see more of her. I think they were really nicely implemented as more of a guilt-ridden flashback than anything else, as that's what my interpretation of it was, that these visions were of him feeling bad for Cortana being captured by the Flood. The climax for the game was the best part of the game for me, fighting off the Flood and then Johnson's heroic death, where he finally goes out with a bang, and then the final chase to rush back to your ship to escape the explosion. Halo 3 is a great game, not the best that I have ever played, but a good FPS at that. The characters were likeable and the story was great, it just felt a little bit too rushed. You're probably wondering what it was like for me, a PlayStation gamer, to be in the boots of Master Chief and experience the world of Halo as him. The Master Chief is basically a blank slate for the player, for me, to project themselves onto. It's refreshing to have a blank character, as most of my PlayStation games are story driven with written characters. And in certain parts of the story where there would be cutscenes, I would know what I would say as Master Chief in those cutscenes, or even have a sense of what he is thinking. This game, Halo 3, has a perfect balance of having a character, but just enough so you can have your own interpretation of him as a person whilst you're playing. I thoroughly enjoyed my time playing Halo 3. It's not my favourite FPS ever, but a good set of characters and plot devices keep me engaged. I'm going to be really honest here, and I can really see myself picking up another Halo game to give the franchise another go, and perhaps see if innovation in the franchise would change my overall experience and reception for the franchise. And so that was Halo 3 from a PlayStation player's perspective. Comment what you thought of my experience down below, and if you're a PlayStation player, would you be interested in giving Halo a try? And if this video gets over 100 views, I'll make sure to review another Halo game from a PlayStation gamer's perspective. So stick around if you want to see more like that. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe and turn on that notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you, and goodbye.